Welcome to the Fin Talks, a chat with Finance Malta. With us today we have Dr. Helga Buttigieg Debono from the National Coordinating Committee on Combating Money Laundering and Funding of Terrorism. Welcome, Helga. Can you please introduce yourself briefly for our audience?
Well, basically, I am the executive head of the Secretariat of the NCC, as we call it for short, because it's quite a mouthful, let's put it this way. And I have been there for almost 4 years now.
Very good, thank you. So money laundering and the funding of terrorism are subjects that are on everyone's lips, everyone's minds. Can you briefly talk about the role of the NCC in addressing these illicit activities?
Mm-hmm. Well, basically the NCC is currently the governing body responsible for the general oversight of the combating of anti-money laundering and funding of terrorism policy, basically. And therefore it is in charge of defining, of overseeing, and of coordinating the implementation of the AML-CFT strategy, as we call it. It is responsible also for promoting effective coordination between the regulators and the law enforcement agencies and for monitoring the interaction between them. So basically that is basically it. But moreover, it is also responsible for assessing the risks and the threats in the field and for formulating risk assessments both at sectorial and also at national level.
Okay, can you give a brief example of some of these risk assessments of how they work?
Well, basically, the risk assessments, they are formulated by actually talking to the different agencies, having statistics, basically, of having meetings with the agencies as well, and for putting up reports so that then they can be distributed to the competent authorities so that they can actually see what the risks are, what the threats are, and to be able to mitigate these risks and threats.
Okay, very good. And the concept of the NCC could be considered to be innovative. How did the need for this entity develop, and how has the work that the NCC does improved and progressed over the years since its inception?
Well, basically, actually, the National Coordinating Committee on Combating Money Laundering and Funding of Terrorism has been established since April 2018. The need to have this entity actually was identified in the last updated National Risk Assessment, which occurred in 2017. Okay. Well, in this assessment, it was highlighted basically that there was the need for better coordination within the competent authorities. Mm-hmm. Although it was acknowledged in the risk assessment that the authorities were indeed working and actually addressing the issues of money laundering and financing of terrorism. There was also the idea, it was pointed out, that these authorities were working in silos.
Right.
So basically, this meant that there was not only lack of coordination, but also there was a lack of knowledge of what the other entities were actually doing in the field. Mm-hmm. So the setting up of the NCC was part of the 2017 to 2020 National Strategy Action Plan, basically. And the existence of the NCC is today to ensure effective monitoring and effective combating of money laundering and funding of terrorism on a national perspective, where all authorities can coordinate, they can act together to guarantee that we have effective measures and to address any gaps which are actually identified.
Okay, so you facilitate that sharing of information and that working together of different authorities?
Yes, we do. We actually work a lot with the authorities. Mm-hmm. So if I can give some background on the actual committee. So today we have this committee, which is composed of the highest officials in Malta, who meet regularly to discuss policies, which are then worked upon upon to have an effective AML CFT structure. So with the advantage of having the highest officials, and I can mention a few of the member boards, we would have the Commissioner of Police himself, we would have the chairpersons of the FIAU, of the MFSA, of the Malta Gaming, the Governor of the Central Bank, the Attorney General, the chairperson of the Asset Recovery Bureau. These are the highest officials. They meet regularly, they actually discuss policies, and then we actually work on them to develop an effective structure, basically. Now, the importance and of having these high officials, it not only ensures that they have a healthy discussion, but it also warrants that the decisions that are taken during board meetings could be dealt with effectively without the members having actually to revert back to their superiors for guidance.
Okay. And are they given advice by people on the front lines of the fight against money laundering?
Yes, of course, because they are usually accompanied by the technical people, by legal persons as well, and we also have subcommittees as well, which actually incorporate more the technical and the legal people to actually do things practically then.
Yes, exactly, because obviously you need the authority to push things through, and then you need the technical know-how to make sure that things are effective and are actually work in the real world.
Exactly.
Okay, very good. And money laundering, financing of terrorism, these are elements that are dynamic. They're always changing, especially with cyber security, the issues around cryptocurrency and threats are changing all the time. How does the NCC make sure it's up to date and it's keeping itself abreast of all these changes and the different threats and risks that could emerge?
The commitment of the NCC is to continue to address the set up action plans and to always identify the current and emerging risks and threats, as you pointed out, through the necessary studies and also by engaging with any entities which are needed, basically. So all our work is found on our website, which is found at ncc.gov.mt, basically. Well, actually, we have just finished up a National Strategy Action Plan, which was from 2017 to 2020. Basically, it has now been fulfilled. And here, we have managed during these first 3 years to identify the gaps so that the authorities today, they have the necessary resources, they have the necessary legislative tools to work with. And that was very, very important because we had many, many deficiencies in the system. We have now set up a new strategy action plan, which has just started this year. It will run through the next 3 years. Now, what will this be doing? This will be focused on using now the resources, the capacity and the tools and the legislation that we have now at hand.
Can you talk me through some of the biggest changes, some of the biggest gaps that you identified and how those have now been
There was a problem with the resources. Some lacked not only resources in human resources, but also systems, and also today I believe computer is really, really important. So we also had to help these people, these authorities, with the costs as well. We also did a lot of training for the officials of the various authorities. The NCC, I believe last year we had around 7 different training sessions for different people from different authorities, police, authority, the AG itself, FIAU, MFSA, and the tax people as well. So, and we are now also thinking about having other training sessions. One of them will be happening even this month to the members of the judiciary, which is quite a novelty, basically, because it has never happened before. And of course, there were other issues, such as legislation. We had a gap in the legislation. One act which we actually did was the Proceeds of Crimes Act last year. So we have now even tackled non-conviction based confiscation as well.
Okay, very good. And we can't talk about money laundering and funding of terrorism without addressing the evaluation by Manival, which brought about the scrutiny by the FATF. Can you talk about the role the NCC played in these evaluations, and also how this process also is mirrored or happens in other countries, and how Malta kind of stands up to scrutiny?
So I'll give you a background on these evaluations. Manival is a permanent monitoring body within the Council of Europe, and it is entrusted with the assessment of compliance with the principal international standards to counter money laundering and financing of terrorism, basically, and to actually monitor the effectiveness of the implementation of these. Basically, member states are periodically subjected, basically, to a process of mutual evaluations, peer reviews, and follow-on reports as well, so as to ensure that national authorities have effective systems in the fight of money laundering and financing of terrorism. During the 2018-2019 period, it was Malta's turn, basically, to undergo an evaluation. The fifth round mutual evaluation report, as they call it, basically, which was dated July 2019, for Malta, was adopted during the 58th plenary session, and was published in September 2019, basically. The report provided a summary of the AML and CFT framework of Malta, as at the time of the on-site visit, which actually happened almost a year before, because the on-site visit by the evaluator in Malta actually occurred between the 5th to the 16th of November of 2018. So the contents of that report actually mirrored what was happening at that time as well. So it analyzed the level of compliance and the level of effectiveness of Malta's structure, basically, in this field. And some deficiencies were actually found, and this report actually gave 58 recommendations to Malta to address, so that we could have a strengthening of our system. Now, during the Manival plenary, which occurred then in April 2021, there was a follow-in report. It's called an enhanced follow-up report for Malta, and this was presented also during this plenary. And this included an examination of the level achieved by Malta as regards the technical annex, basically. Unfortunately, it was pointed out that Malta actually failed 9 immediate outcomes out of 11, which is quite a lot. So what this meant was that Malta also came under the scrutiny of FATF. So due to this, Malta needed to start reporting also to FATF, as we are now also doing, and we keep on doing. And this happened in March 2021. It started. And we were reporting on the effectiveness of the Maltese structure. Then what followed was a plenary in June 2021, a FATF plenary. And it was discussed that Malta actually needed to address deficiencies more, particularly in 2 particular immediate outcomes. So it was decided to put Malta under the ICRG process, in what the layman terms, they call it the infamous grey list. So this FATF evaluation is basically, then what we followed was it was composed out of face-to-face dialogue by the Maltese authorities and the evaluation group, basically which is composed out of a number of experts, and it is co-chaired by 2 Fatah experts.
Right.
And since then, Malta has had many meetings, and we have continuously been reporting as well to the Fatah Secretariat on the progress which the authorities are making. And what we actually did was as well, we chose to keep on reporting voluntarily, although it wasn't really needed from the Fatah Secretariat. And this basically brought about, I think, what is very positive. What happened was last week there was another plenary, the Fatah plenary, and the Maltese position was actually discussed, and it was decided that Malta has made sufficient progress to warrant an on-site visit by the evaluation team, basically.
When will this take place?
This will take place physically, and hopefully it will happen in the next month. So now we are preparing also for this evaluation.
That will potentially lead to Malta being taken off the grey list.
Exactly. What this means is that the evaluation team will be coming here, they will be meeting the authorities, and they will be gauging our system and the progress that we have done.
And what role does the NCC play in this evaluation and in this journey that Malta needs to take?
Well, should it be decided that Malta has achieved the needed progress and address the deficiencies, then the evaluators would basically draw up a report, basically. And this will be presented in the next plenary, which will happen in June. And then a decision would be made whether Malta may be removed from the ICRG process or not.
And
the NCC, during all this process, I have tried to give a brief summary of what we've passed through, but we've been there from the very start. We've been consolidating reports, which are fed into by the various authorities. We have been submitting the reports ourselves, both at Manival level and at Fatah level. When the reports of Manival and Fatah actually came out and were published, we have actually assessed the contents that there were, assessed the deficiencies which were pointed out. We have set up an action plan. We have had distinct and different meetings with the stakeholders. We have discussed the action plan with them, and we are now monitoring the progress that is being made.
And does the NCC have executive powers? Because you mentioned, that the highest authorities sit on the committee. Does the NCC have the power to tell them, these are the gaps, these are things that we need to address? What are you going to do about it?
What I can tell you, no, we don't have executive power. We support. But I can assure you that there is political commitment. There is commitment within the board members. And don't forget, the board members are actually the highest officials of these authorities, which actually need to do things. So we have had a lot of cooperation, I can assure you that. And that is the secret of the NCC.
Right, because you are this kind of bridge to bring people together, to bring authorities and institutions together. And have you liaised with other countries who have gone through this process?
Not us ourselves, but I believe that the FIAU do that, the MFSA do that. So, and we have also made use of the advice of various international consultants who are actually evaluators themselves, who are helping us as well with actually identifying our deficiencies and how to effectively get rid of them.
Yes, of course. And what's your outlook for this next evaluation, if you can share?
At the moment, it's very, very confidential, of course.
Okay.
We've all had to sign the confidentiality treatments, agreements, to actually take part in the dialogues
Yes.
with Fatah. But hopefully now we will be coordinating also for the on-site visit. We will be helping out for the evaluators to actually meet with the authorities, and we hope that they will have a positive report, and hopefully we can get out of this infamous grey list as soon as possible.
Yes.
Let's put it this way. Malta has been commended for doing a lot of progress in just 9 months. Malta was given initially, and during the last plenary, when it was put on this list, it was given out up to January 2023
Right.
to deliver.
So
if we were to actually get out of the ICRG process beforehand, that would be a very, very great achievement for our authorities.
Okay. And what are the critical steps that need to be taken to go into this with a positive?
Well, basically,
resolution?
what the authorities are doing, I think, is really good.
Okay.
I commend them. Really, we are still having meetings. We are still doing our utmost, basically, and most of the things have actually been addressed.
Okay.
So let's keep our fingers crossed, because we still have to welcome them for the on-site visit. But I think the authorities are well prepared as well.
Okay. Very good. Thank you very much for your time, Helga. And thank you, audience, for listening. You can find this recording on all the podcast platforms and Finance Malta's YouTube channel.